Life is really a balance between the physical world and the spiritual world. Now, of course, for those of us who truly know, there is no difference between these two worlds. There is just one world. But of course, that's not the way that our mind usually sees things, right? We like to bifurcate between the things we do on a day-to-day basis, whether that's, our careers, our relationships, the natural sort of things that we find ourselves doing versus kind of the more spiritual things, the things that will bring us true fulfillment, true wisdom, true understanding, and ultimately awakening. And, this is something that I think a lot of us struggle with, right? We're, at least for a lot of the people that I've encountered in life, we tend to have kind of more of a bias towards the physical world because those are the things that inevitably take up a lot of our time, right? Think about all the time that you spend going to school, all the time that you spend for work, all the time that you spend with your friends and your family. These are things that take up a substantial amount of your own time. And I probably, for most of us, and I don't want to generalize here because it's sometimes dangerous to generalize, but for most of us, we tend to spend more time doing things, fulfilling tasks, fulfilling responsibilities than actually spending time on, meditating or reading or listening to spiritual talks or going out for nature or doing some sort of introspection, remembering God, the sort of things that you would probably associate with spirituality and spiritual development. But you see, as much as it might seem convenient to try to separate these two, this video is really designed to help you think of it all as one, to see if you can fuse and bring your spirituality in your natural day-to-day life. One of the things that I've discovered recently, in going to the gym, I used to be someone that loved listening to music when I'm going to the gym. It'd get me pumped up, it'd get me motivated, put the right tunes, and somehow I'd be able to unleash this power that I didn't have before. That was the thinking. In reality, however, I've practiced a few times now, and I've discovered that there is actually an incredible beauty to not having music, to not having distractions when I work out. I can concentrate more on the actual exercise. I can notice my surroundings. I can notice kind of the energy in the room. And more than just kind of hearing, the grunting or the weights being dropped or, the machines being, whooshing and zooming back and forth. More than that, I can also hear a silence between all that. I can feel the presence of God. Now, this might sound like an unusual statement, how do you really connect this to going to the gym? But believe me, it is possible. It is possible to bring our spiritual aspects of life into the most mundane aspects of life, into the most ordinary aspects of life. Growing up, this is something, and, as I've developed and grown in my career, this is something that's really been challenging for me, especially because I've always been someone, at least for as long as I can remember, that didn't really like following, the normal path that everyone else was following, right? There were times, of course, where, I got kind of lost into the physical world and trying to make something out of myself in this world. But there was always a part of me that kind of rebelled, that kind of didn't want to just do what everyone else was doing, that felt like I had something deeper to do, some sort of a deeper purpose or mission, some sort of a journey that I needed to travel on beyond just, having a career, kind of living my life and, so on and so forth. There had to be some ultimate meaning behind it. And the more I gravitated toward this idea, the more I resisted the moments when I was thrust into the physical world, specifically in my career. There have been many times where I simply just didn't enjoy what I was doing. I would enjoy for a while, I'd be lured into the ideas and illusion of being successful and making money and having a good life and so on and so forth. But then there would be kind of this like, tinge, this kind of pain in the back of my mind, bothering me, poking at me every single day, questioning, am I living the life I'm supposed to be living? And so naturally, there was this aversion to all sorts of work, to all sorts of being involved in the physical world. To my immature mind back then, we should shun all these things and we should spend more time trying to awaken ourselves. I didn't realize that awakening could actually be found here. I didn't realize that awakening could be found right here, right now. We don't all need to let go of everything that we're doing. We don't need to say goodbye to everyone in our lives, go live in the mountains to experience awakening, to realize ourself, to realize our purpose and our true essence in life. It can be found right here. And life has kind of taught me in a rather challenging way that don't resist this. Don't push back these things. Don't just dismiss them, because you know what? God put them in your life for a reason. And you resisting them and thinking that you know better than God will only make this process more difficult, will only make you suffer more, because you're craving more time to read your books and to meditate and to be with God when you can be with God right now. Who says that you can't be with God when you're working out? Who says you can't be with God when you're at work talking with your colleagues? Who says you can't be with God when you're with your partner and you guys are going for, a date night, or, you're taking a walk on the beach? Who says you can't remember God? Why does God only have to be limited to certain moments or to certain times or to certain activities when the entire essence of life is God, when the entire essence of us is God? And this was, I can say it now very confidently, but it took many years for me to discover it. It was a very profound realization. It was something that completely shifted my entire perspective on life. And even though now I'm still, very much in my career, this isn't a secret, I'm sure some of you guys have researched me online. I do work in the business world. It is something that I do. Even though I still am in my career, my motivations now are very different from the motivations from when I started. Now it's very much an attitude of service and an attitude of how can I bring the spiritual elements. The people in the business world are sometimes my greatest spiritual teachers. They teach me things like patience, like kindness, selflessness. And I know that can sound very contradictory in a role that's often associated with profits and greed and capitalism, but it's all a matter of how you look at things. It's funny, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, I received a comment, a rather, I don't want to say nasty comment, but just kind of a comment, someone trying to figure out or questioning, apparently someone who had done a little bit more research on kind of what I do for a living, questioning, how I can have these videos and how I can, get up here on my soapbox and talk about these things when I work for a company that is supposedly motivated by money and et cetera, et cetera. And, I responded to this individual that it's very hard looking from the outside in to really know a person, right? Everyone has the right to judge and form an opinion about someone, including myself. But it's until you know that person, until you know their ideas, until you spend time with them, it's very hard to just kind of look at one thing and say, this person is like this. The way I see it is, um, we all have to make a living somehow, right? That's just the nature and reality of it. Even some of the greatest spiritual teachers, some of the people who came up with the greatest spiritual insights that gifted us with such knowledge and wisdom, we're still tasked with the day-to-day necessities of life. My mind always comes to folks like Attar, who was one of Rumi's spiritual teachers and guides, and one of his major influences. He was a pharmacist, right? He was a physician. He would spend his days tending to his clients, But in his free time, he would write some of the most incredible spiritual poetry out there. Poetry that inspired and shaped Rumi's life for the better. Perhaps if it wasn't for individuals like Attar, we wouldn't get, the beautiful wisdom of Rumi. You see, it all has some sort of an effect. You see it sometimes with writers, right? Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the writer of Sherlock Holmes, he was a physician. And there's countless examples, both in the spiritual world and in other aspects of life, where you see people tapping into their creativity, tapping into their true purpose and nature, even though while doing kind of the normal activity. Another great example that came up is Einstein, right? Working at a post office. You wouldn't expect Einstein to work at a post office, but sometimes, even in the midst of doing something that can seem mundane and ordinary and day to day, some great revelation is to be had. So it's not a matter of bifurcating it or separating. It doesn't mean that if you have a YouTube channel that talks about spirituality, that you can't be in the business world, that you can't make a living for you and your family. That's not the purpose. There are many people in the business world that are spiritual, that do remember God, that have a clean and pure heart, and vice versa. There are people who claim to be spiritual, but are just trying to get people's money, trying to get subscribers, are doing things for the wrong reasons, for recognition, for fame, and so on and so on. So you can't look at things at the surface. You have to go deeper. And you have to find a way to kind of fuse these two worlds together. They should be one and the same, because your life is one and the same. Every single thing that you encounter is meant to be spiritual, right? No matter if it seems like it's so unrelated to your spiritual journey. Guess what? You encountering it means it's part of your spiritual journey. How you handle it means it's part of your spiritual journey. And if you struggle with it in the normal course of life, then chances are you'll probably have to repeat that lesson sometime later in life. Just like I did with, not treating my work, at least initially, with the attention that it deserved. Not being so consumed by it where, I'm thinking about it and I'm working on it 24/7, but also not, trying to shun it, not trying to ignore it or suppress it, respecting it, honoring it, recognizing that we all have some sort of a contribution to give to this world. For me, my contribution is not just what I give to the business world, but also what I give to the spiritual world. And if you ask me, what I give to the spiritual world is much, much greater, brings me much, much more satisfaction and joy than what I bring to the physical world. But the way life is, that's just kind of how things go, right? We all have multiple responsibilities and multiple ways of giving value. So I hope this video kind of sheds some light into the ways in which we can balance and dance between these two worlds. They don't have to be separate. They don't have to be, in fact, they shouldn't be separate. They should all be one. And it's a matter of just expanding your perception and perspective to see that they're all interrelated with one another. The things that you probably take for granted, the things that probably, going to the movies, going to the grocery store, these are all opportunities to connect on a deeper level, to connect with yourself on a deeper level. It's important, yes, to dedicate those time to those spiritual activities, to those moments in solitude and silence to first cultivate that understanding. That part is necessary because sometimes we're just kind of running in a hamster wheel. We don't really know what's going on, or we just have our heads in the sand and we're just kind of living life moment by moment, day by day, without really understanding what's the broader scheme behind all of this. So sometimes those initial moments in what we would call kind of a traditional spiritual setting would help. But then after that, it's just back to normal life. Like there's this I don't know which book it was that I came across it. It probably was Ram Dass's Be Here Now, where talking about even after a person has awakened, they're still chopping wood and carrying water. You're still doing the normal tasks of life. That doesn't mean that just because you're awakened that all of a sudden you're free from all the normal responsibilities of life. If you're awakened and you're a parent, you still have the responsibilities to your child. If you're awakened and you are a doctor, you still have a responsibility to your patients. So being awakened doesn't mean that you pull yourself out of the world. Being awakened means you pull yourself into the world and you can actually help people on a deeper level. Right? The example that comes to my mind a lot is Buddha, right? Buddha, spent many years in isolation. He spent many years trying to discover the ultimate truth of how to overcome our suffering. And he ultimately discovered it, right? Under the famous Bodhi tree, he achieved enlightenment. But he didn't just, say, okay, goodbye, society. I'll see you later. Good luck to everyone who wants to follow this path. No, he traveled and he shared his knowledge with every single person that he met. He didn't judge them based on what he thought their abilities were to grasp the knowledge, to grasp the wisdom, to awaken. He treated everyone equally and fairly because he knew that everyone had the capacity to awaken. Anyone who wanted to listen, he would share his wisdom. And by doing so, he was able to sow so many seeds of understanding, of wisdom that have trickled on 2,500 years later. So you see, it's a matter of, helping your own self grow, but then also putting that back into the world, putting that back into life. They're all interrelated, they're all connected. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and, gained a little bit of a deeper appreciation for these two worlds that are in essence really just one world. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, and please don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video and you enjoyed some of the other videos on this channel. But as always, I thank you again for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on another one of these videos.